Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle one of the most incredible literary puzzles out there, the internal consistency of the Bible. You know, on paper, this collection of books really should be a complete and total mess. But is it? Let's dig in.
So let me just throw a challenge at you. Imagine trying to write a single, coherent story with about 40 different authors. The catch? These authors are spread across 3 continents, they speak different languages, and they're separated by over a millennium and a half. Oh, and the most important rule, they can never, ever meet or collaborate. Do you think they could pull it off?
I mean, honestly, the odds are just staggering. It's like the longest, most complex game of telephone in human history. The message should get twisted, fragmented, completely contradictory. By any normal logic, creating a unified book this way should be absolutely impossible. And yet, that's the exact scenario we're looking at with the Bible.
Just look at this for a second. The first line of Genesis, in the beginning, and a line from the very last book, Revelation. Then I saw a new heaven. These were written more than 1,000 years apart. Different authors, completely different worlds, and yet they work as perfect bookends to one single sweeping story.
So, how on earth is this possible? Well, let's start by looking at the people who were actually holding the pen. Who were these writers? Now, scholars can debate the details, but the big picture is crystal clear. This was not a story written by some small elite group of thinkers. The incredible diversity of the authors is really our first clue that something very unusual is going on here.
The list of authors is just all over the map. You have kings writing from their palaces and fishermen jotting things down from their boats. You have highly educated scholars like Paul, but you also have shepherds like David, prophets, and even prisoners writing from jail cells. There was no writer's room, no shared Google Doc. And their lives were being tossed around by the rise and fall of these massive, world-changing empires. Some wrote from a place of security in the Egyptian Empire, others in total despair during the Babylonian exile. They wrote through the Persian Restoration, the Greek intellectual explosion, and under the iron fist of the Roman Empire. Their worlds could not have been more different.
Take this famous line, for example. It's written by King David, right? But he's reaching back to his first job, his time as a simple shepherd boy. It's a perspective that is both royal and incredibly humble, totally grounded in real life.
Now fast forward hundreds and hundreds of years. A totally new voice comes on the scene, recorded by the followers of a carpenter from Galilee. This isn't a command from a king sitting on a throne. It's a simple invitation from a man walking by the sea, calling a couple of fishermen to a completely new way of life. The whole power dynamic is flipped on its head.
And this is the real kicker. Despite all these huge differences in who they were, where they lived, when they lived, the writings don't fly off in 1,000 different directions. Instead, they all seem to converge, pointing toward one single, coherent moral and spiritual destination.
Now, let's be clear. This doesn't mean every book sounds the same. That would be boring. The Bible's consistency isn't about being monotonous. It's more like there's this shared central story, a kind of golden thread, that weaves its way through all these wildly different styles and voices.
At its very core, the whole biblical story can be broken down into this simple 4-part structure. It kicks off with a perfect creation. That's followed by a tragic fracture, a break in the relationship between people and God. But that leads to a promise of healing, which all builds to the final act, restoration. This arc is the backbone of the entire collection.
And you can literally watch specific ideas get passed down like a baton in a relay race across centuries. In Genesis, a promise is made to one guy, Abraham, that all nations will be blessed through him. Hundreds of years later, the prophet Isaiah picks up that exact same thread, talking about nations coming to a great light. And then, all the way at the end, in Revelation, you see the vision fulfilled, with people from every nation and language gathered together. Different authors, one single, expanding vision.
The styles themselves are also incredibly different. I mean, you've got the raw, emotional poetry of the Psalms, where the writer is just crying out in doubt. And then you have the super clear, direct command of the law in Leviticus. One is a question coming from the heart, the other is a rule for society. But here's the thing, they both come from the same deep well of understanding about who we are and what matters. And this is maybe the most mind-bending part of the whole puzzle. This amazing unity happened without any coordinating committee. There was no central editor-in-chief. Most of these authors were writing without having the full picture, and they certainly didn't know how their work would slot into a story that wouldn't be finished for centuries.
Let me give you a perfect example.
In the Psalms, a poet writes this beautiful, metaphorical line about a stone that the builders just tossed aside. At the time, it's a powerful poem about feeling rejected and hoping for vindication.
Now zoom forward centuries. The Gospels record Jesus quoting that exact line and applying it directly to himself. A poetic image from the deep past suddenly becomes a theological foundation for the future. The new text doesn't change the old one, it completes its meaning in this really surprising and precise way.
Okay, so we've seen this incredible diversity of writers and this surprising, powerful unity in what they wrote. The big question we have to ask now is, so what? What are the implications of all this? What does this remarkable consistency actually mean for us as we read it today?
Look, the Bible's internal consistency doesn't, by itself, prove it's from God or force anyone to believe. It's not a math equation, but what it does do is present a serious challenge to just shrugging it off. It makes it really, really hard to be indifferent or to just dismiss it as a random jumble of ancient myths.
What we're really talking about here is internal consistency. That's just the idea that all these individual parts, written across all that time, actually contribute to a whole that doesn't contradict itself. And what that suggests is that we're dealing with something far more structured and intentional than just a collection of campfire stories.
So what's the takeaway here? Well, there are kind of two main ways to look at this evidence. At the very least, you could say the Bible represents a literary and cultural tradition that is just unbelievably resilient, one that kept its core message intact against all odds. Or, at most, as many believers would say, it suggests a single guiding intelligence, a divine author, working through dozens of human voices over a vast stretch of time. And that really leaves us with a fascinating and kind of challenging question. We've seen the evidence for this incredible coherence. But can you really engage with this book honestly, acknowledge its unique literary unity, without also believing that it's the Word of God? That's a huge question, and it's one we'll start to unpack next time. Thanks for watching.